What is up, humans of the cardboard? Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. If you haven't heard, we have confirmation that Witchcrafters, Mayakashi, and Sky Strikers are all confirmed for 2 new cards for each archetype. That's very interesting. Obviously, Sky Striker, like as far as being meta relevant, is the most interesting one there. But I do think a lot of Witchcrafter and Mayakashi fans are dancing. I know a lot of people actually like Witchcrafter. So today we're going to be talking about what the deck has and what I would like to see out of the 2 new cards, because if Konami's gonna base a product around 2 new cards of support for 3 archetypes, they better damn well be some good cards. So let's get into this real quick. Let's jump into this real quick. Starting off with the monsters, we're gonna skim through everything that the deck has right now, and then we can talk about you know, what we're missing. So of course we start off here with Witchcrafter Schmieda. She's like the best girl in the deck. If you don't know, all of the main deck small Witchcrafter monsters have the same first effect, and then they have a second effect in grave. So Schmieda is really good. The same first effect is that during the main phase as a quick effect, so on your turn or your opponent's, during the main phase, you can tribute them and discard a spell card to special summon a Witchcrafter monster straight from the deck. Secondly, they have their graveyard effect. Schmieda's is the best one because she can banish herself from grave to send a Witchcrafter card from deck to grave. So Foolish Burial, any other graveyard effect you might want to get live, or all the spells add themselves back on end phase. So you just dump something that you want to get back on end phase. So she's kind of like, she helps make up for resources pretty well. Next up, we have PITTOREK, same first effect, right? Tagging out, but also you can banish her from grave to draw 1 card to send, and then send a Witchcrafter card from your hand to the graveyard. But if you have none in your hand, you are forced to banish your entire hand. But it can be nice to cycle, especially since, like, if you already have a Witchcrafter spell in hand, you go draw a card, discard the Witchcrafter spell, and then the Witchcrafter spell is going to get added back to your hand on the end phase anyway via its own effect. So it can just be a free draw sometimes, but not always. It's not always live, so keep that in mind. Next up, we have POTTERIE. Same first effect, obviously. Second effect, though, if you have no cards in your hand, you can banish it from grave to target a Witchcrafter card in grave and add it back to your hand. So it gives you that graveyard recursion. It's better with adding back monsters, I guess, more so than like adding back the spells and traps, unless you already had to use a spell traps effect on field. So it's nice to just be able to get that back to hand, because otherwise you wouldn't be getting it back for a whole nother like 2 turns, which is pretty brutal. So she's nice. And then you have GENNI. GENNI is one of the newer ones here. Same first effect and the second effect. You can banish her and a Witchcrafter spell from grave, and then this effect becomes the effect of that spell when it's activated. So she kind of helps you like copy your spell effects, and that does matter also because it gets a Witchcrafter spell banished. You'll see there's a card later that has something to do with that as well. So she's fine. I mean, like she can get you an extra Rhoda. She can get you an extra Monster Reborn, pull extra stuff out of the hand. She's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, like she was a pretty good legacy support, I think, but not necessarily what the deck needed to really take that next step. You have EDEL. She can discard a spell to special summon a Witchcrafter from your hand. She doesn't tribute herself, which she does that at least, which is fine. But also she can tribute herself to target a spellcaster in grave and special summon it. So she's fine. She's high level, so she can't be normal summon, so drawing her stinks. But also your other boss monsters stink to draw as well. So sometimes it's necessary to play a card like her just to help pull the other ones out of the hand, but I still don't love it. Her design is cool though. Then you have Witchcrafter Golem ARURU. This is like a hand trap for the archetype. So when your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a spellcaster you control or targets it for an attack, you can target any card your opponent controls or a Witchcrafter spell in your grave, special summon this card, and bounce the card you targeted. So essentially this becomes like a hand trap. So if they try to target you or attack you on any of your spellcasters, she jumps out of hand and like can either bounce a card from them or get you a recursion from any Witchcrafter spell in grave, which is pretty good. And once per turn during your opponent's standby, she bounces herself back to the hand, loads herself up again to continue to give you that that protection over and over, which is kind of cool actually. That is actually a pretty good card. But it's better when your opponent doesn't know about it, because they can try to attempt to play around it with like non-targeting removal and stuff like that. Next up, we have Hane. Hane's one of the better boss monsters. So she says your opponent can't target other spellcasters you control with card effects, so she floodgates it all towards herself. If you have 2 of her though, that your opponent can't target anything with card effects, kind of cool. It has a quick effect where you can discard any spell to target a face-up card your opponent controls and destroy it. So just Trident by discarding a spell. It's pretty good. She's one of the better ones, but again, as you see, there's no effect here that summons herself, so she can brick in the hand pretty brutally. But yeah, which is tough. Then we have Witchcrafter, Madame VERRE, kind of the same thing. Doesn't summon herself from hand, but she has a couple of interesting effects. During damage calculation, if any spellcaster battles, you can reveal any number of spells with different names in your hand, and if you do, the battling monster gains 1,000 for each card revealed. I love that this is reveal and not discards. You don't have to like lose all of your hand advantage to get this card live. And you can also quick effect discard a spell to negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls until the end of the turn. So she also has like a blanket board negate as a quick effect as well. So the idea is like end on her plus her with at least 2 spells in hand, and you have a you have a nice little setup there. Moving into some of the spells, creation is just Rhoda, but all the spells have the same second effect where if you did not activate their first effect, you can just add them back to your hand on end phase. So if you're using them as discard fodder, you're just going to get them back for free. That is very, very important. You need to be maximizing that as we play. Holiday, this card is Monster Reborn for the archetype, and same thing, adds itself back. Unveiling is a quick effect that helps you special summon a Witchcrafter from your hand, and then keeps your opponent from responding to the activation of spellcaster effects for the rest of the turn. That actually is kind of nice, but still, special summoning from hand kind of feels like a neg one. Draping is like horrible back row removal. It bounces spells and traps up to the number of Witchcrafters you control. Bouncing is horrible for back row removal. We want destruction, we want banishing, we want shuffling, and like not much else. We don't want to be giving them back to their hand. And then you have the continuous spells. You have BYSTREET and Scroll. BYSTREET gives you destruction protection for your Witchcrafters, but you can also send it from field to grave to get the Witchcrafter effects instead of having to discard. Same thing with Scroll, except it doesn't give you destruction protection and actually gets you a draw every time a spellcaster destroys a monster by battle. So nothing crazy, but nice. I like BYSTREET a lot. Scroll is okay. And then there's 2 traps. And I don't know why there are 2 traps, but there are 2 traps. Masterpiece, if you control a Witchcrafter monster, target a spell in either graveyard, add 1 card with the same name from deck to hand. So it does technically search a card, but it only searches what's in grave already. During either player's turn, except the turn this card is sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card and a number of spells from your grave to special summon a Witchcrafter straight from the deck with a level equal to the number of spells banished. That's fine, but it's a trap. It's way too slow. It needs to be a disruption, or it's not good enough, to be honest. Like, you can't have engine traps on your opponent's turn unless they're getting you to disruption, and this does not do that. You also have Patronus. Patronus lets you target one of your spellcaster monsters that's banished or engraved, shuffle into the deck, and then add a Witchcrafter spell from hand, from deck to hand. And also, if this card is in the graveyard, except the turn it was sent there, banish this card, then target any number of your banished Witchcrafter spells with different names and add them to your hand. Like, this is any number, like any number of different names. You could technically add like 5 back to your hand, but theoretically you're not getting that many banished turn 1 or even like at all, because as you can tell, I think only GENNI and Masterpiece are the only 2 cards that banish your Witchcrafter spells, and this card is not good in the archetype. But this at least gets you a search for a spell every single turn as long as you keep getting Witchcrafters in grave. So that's actually not the worst thing in the world. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the quick overview there. Sorry if that's not as quick as it should have been, but yeah, I want to make sure we're all on the same page here. Here's what the deck is missing. 1, the deck is insanely slow. Usually turn 1, you're just getting to like a Hain or a VERRE, but not both. Sometimes you can get to both, and that's okay, but it's not all that often. Secondly, you have like disruption is not all over the place in this archetype. You literally just have VERRE and Hain, which are decent, but I'd love to see it come from somewhere else. I'd love to see a quick play spell that, like, you know, Widow Anchor-esque, right? Something like that. I think something like Widow Anchor would be like super, super good in the deck. Like, if you control a Witchcrafter, like steal an opponent's monster and like, yeah. And then like maybe give it an effect where like you can send that opponent's monster to activate like a Witchcrafter effect that discards for cost. That would be kind of cool. So that like it's, even though you're like stealing to the end of the turn, like they don't get it back because you can just like send it for a different effect. That'd be pretty interesting, I think, but I don't know. So that's definitely something. I'd want to see a quick play spell that's like actual disruption, because just making these is like really bad. Also, like the deck loses to Ash. All of the main deck girls that like just summon them, you have to tribute them and discard a spell as cost. If that wasn't cost, I wouldn't be that mad, but it's literally cost. So you literally go -2 by getting ashed. It's so bad. So the deck definitely needs a way to play through Ash. Or I don't know. Like, I'm really curious. Like, I think a Link 1 could be in play here. I don't even know exactly what it would do, but like the deck needs to do more turn 1, because the deck just doesn't set up a strong enough board turn 1, and because it's slower, a lot of decks in the game will just steamroll it in 1 turn. And because you just didn't have enough time to like get things rolling, if you can get to turn 2 and 3, this deck actually can compete with some of these legit decks in the game. So you'll see that if you duel a good deck in the game and they draw like a pretty weak hand and their hand is kind of slow, you actually can compete, because you start rotating your spells, you start getting 3 or 4 of them in grave, and they're constantly coming back every single turn. It feels like you're getting like a ton of cards per turn. And if they can't keep Hain and Madame Verre off the field, they're going to struggle to like actually make things happen. So it's cool. I think it has a nice base. I mean, I talked about it when the cards came out too. I wish that Hain and Madame Verre had been contact fusion monsters like Thunder Dragon, Colossus, and Titan, that just said like you contribute, and it was their clause that said like you contribute a Witchcrafter they control and discard a spell to summon them from hand, or just make it so that all these girls, even like keeping them as quick effects, lets you tribute them and discard a spell to quick effect summon them out of the extra deck. That would have been really cool, and it meant that we didn't have to brick on them, because brick, and sometimes you're forced to even play her just because you have these bricks. And like if you draw your 1 of Madame Verre and you really need Madame Verre, or your 1 of or 2 of Hain and like you really need her on field, EDEL is like the only way to get it out, aside from drawing Unveiling, and Unveiling isn't searchable from creation. It's only searchable by the trap, so, or sending it off of like Schmeta. So it's really not reliable on how easy it is to get every individual spell, and it just gets tough. So what I want to see the most of out of these 2 cards is speed. We need something a little bit faster to like get a nice little setup turn 1. We need a way to plus. That's the other thing too, is like at the end of your next turn you start to plus, but usually turn 1 you don't plus at all. And I get it, Extravagance is solid in the deck, but like if you play that, you can't play any more draw cards for the rest of the turn. So that's definitely a downside there, but like still overall pretty good. Maybe Triple Tactics Talent is something, so that if you do get you know, ashed, which is going to be very common, you can at least like get something out of it, potentially draw 2, try to make up resources and move on from there. But easier said than done, you know? So I don't know. I really don't know, but the deck is still cool. I'm still very excited to see where they go with this. I just hope they really give us 2 really strong cards that kind of cover up what the deck needs, because there's kind of a couple holes here. The deck's just been too slow overall, and hopefully the new cards will help us deal with that. But that is pretty much going to do it for us here today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, let me know in the comment section down below what you would want to see for the Witchcrafter archetype out of these 2 brand new cards. And also let me know if you want me to do a video for Sky Strikers as well as Mayakashi. I guess Mayakashi makes more sense. Strikers are already like a competent deck. They have been for ever since they got it released, pretty much. So that's gonna do it for me here though. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you have not yet and you want to see more discussion videos like this one in the future. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.